Okay, so we want to do the breakdown of this view before we get into the build proper. I like that it's already set up like with I mean, if you take a step back, you can see a gray background and then you can see white boxes, and you can think of the white boxes as widgets. So I like how the widgets are already outlined in a neat fashion. It's going to make setting up the base for the visual really easy, because if you think about it, it's really just a set of boxes. Now, thinking about how the boxes get populated, this is clearly now thinking about space between static and dynamic text. This is clearly static. This is dynamic, 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 dynamic. The labels are static, static. I guess these are static, but they are links to other documents outside of the template, and that you can easily do in Excel. You can create hyperlinks to other documents from Excel. This is a button that links out, but we're not going to set it up as a button because I'm not quite sure where it links to. And then these are links of, I guess, key project contacts, and I imagine these are hyperlinks, and I imagine if you click them, you can maybe immediately send an email to Harry H or Jerome S, or maybe link to their profile. But I think it's most likely a link to their email, so we can set that up as well. Of course, I'm going to use exactly this information here because I don't have any data of my own. Over here, this is a Gantt chart setup. These might be actually put in directly into the sheet. You can set it up as a dynamic view where these feed from a Gantt chart at the back end. That might not be necessary for this particular demonstration, but where that would be useful was if this project extended beyond April, May, June, and then you have just this space to show it off. You can have a Gantt chart with a scroll bar, so you're able to scroll to the other parts and see them without compromising the structure of this view. But I guess we don't need to go into that because this project is declare all the finished dates in April, and April is here. So I would skip that, and then I would build the chart as is in here. Now, thinking about the way the bar charts are set up, these are clearly shapes on top of tables. I prefer to set up my Gantt charts as colored boxes, and then the column would be colored out depending on the start and finish date selected. And I think I'm going to do that, even though this looks really cute, but I think mine is still going to look good as well. This can be set up as conditional formats where depending on the target, where all 5 complete resources refer to maybe a team of 100, because I imagine this might not just be teams of 1, 3, 4, but they could be representations of teams of 100, teams of 10, or whatsoever. So you could have this set up as a hidden column, and then this is a conditional format, or you could have something set up at the back end for this. This is reading from a hidden column as well. There's a column that is reading to ask if this marker is 50, then give us a yellow. If this marker is 100, then give us a green, and on like that. So that's about this view. This view shows this. This is accommodating the summary panels for 5 projects, but this table has about 10 projects, so we can set this up to have a second row right below it, or maybe a scroll bar. Just imagining we have only the space to use, and then we can have a scroll bar that shows the first row, and then if you click the down button in the scroll bar, it shows you the next row. With that in mind, let's get to it. So I've started building the visual view out, and I'm starting with the Gantt chart area, the area that has the project names, their start and finish dates, and the actual timeline. And I started with that because that's the part of this dashboard that requires actual rows and columns. The rest are basically shapes drawn out over the rows and columns. I've done that, and like I always do, I use the eyedropper to match the color of the background to the color in the original dashboard I'm recreating. Now I've started building out the white boxes, which I like to think of as widgets. I really like the gray and white setup, so it's easy to track how many boxes I need, and I'm just reshaping the different boxes based on the sizes I can see in the original. Unfortunately, I lost the footage where I filled in the text, so you can see that the view skips over to majority of the text already being in. And now what I'm doing is completing the text. And as I'm working with the text, so that I can keep track of the text that is static and that is dynamic, I'm highlighting the dynamic text in red font, and the text I'm going to replace with conditional formatting icons, I have highlighted those with the yellow fill. The work of recreating this dashboard is 80% input of text and alignment of text and text boxes in the right order, 15% conditional formatting, and 5% linked pictures and hyperlinks. So you'll notice that I skip over some of the parts that involve inputting text. Over to the Gantt chart, which is where the font starts. I'm going to create an automated Gantt chart that automatically colors out the cells that represent the project duration, which is the time between the start and the end date, by creating a conditional formula which checks for when the numbers, the date above equals to or is greater than the start date and equals to or is less than the finish date. And I've set that up and you can see that it works. Even it's so dynamic that if you go in to change the start date, the cells automatically color out without having to recolor the cells. This hack makes it easy to set up Gantt charts that can be changed anytime in Excel. Now I've moved the text to the back end because there are definitely elements of this that will have to feed from the back end. The computations of what is going to feed into the summary panels have to be created at the back end. So I took a snapshot of the summary panel to remind myself of all the columns to be recreated. I'm using randomized data to generate some of them using the choose and run between function. And for the summary panel, I have to create data on status, stage, budget, spend, and resources. And I've created randomized data for each of those. Now I'm going over to set up the conditional formats. I mentioned earlier that the conditional formats was using a hidden column, but actually you can set up conditional formats to hide everything else except the icon. So it doesn't have to be a hidden column. Like you can see, you simply check box in the that shows icons only, and you can actually have your conditional formats in the same cell as the actual value. So what I'm doing now is I am using text referencing to bring in all the information that has been set up. I have to do it one after the other, so this can be a tiring task. But the benefit of setting it up this way is that once you set it up, it's a good to go template. This is where all the hard work is. Once you have all of this text references set up, all you need to do to use the template is to go in and put in your data at the back end, and the information comes in automatically. So all the hard work just happens at this template setup stage. So now I'm creating the summary statistics, the ones that show up at the very top of the sheet for the program health, the number at risk, and I'm using randomized information. So I set up the icons at the back end. I use randomized data, set up the icons at the back end, and then I'm bringing them to the front end as linked pictures. And these linked pictures, I stretched them out as much as possible, but I had to reduce because they were coming with a weird outline, so there was a limit to which I could stretch them out. Now I'm setting up those stickman figures for the resourcing, and I mentioned that I was going to use conditional formats, the data bars in the conditional format. And what I'm going to do is create a template of 5 stickmen. You can see that I'm drawing out the stickmen. I realized I started doing this in Excel, and I noticed that the shape format features were limited, so I moved it into PowerPoint. In PowerPoint, there is a merge shapes feature where you can select 2 different shapes, and laying them on top of each other, you can either create a union of an intersection out of them. Essentially, I selected the combine feature, and the combine feature helped me create the cutout stencils that I needed to create the stickman shapes for the resources. So I created a white rectangle and circles with no fill representing the head, and long rounded rectangles with no fill representing the bodies. And I selected each of those shapes one after the other to cut them out on the white rectangle. I did this for each of those 10 shapes, there's 5 circles and the 5 rounded rectangles, to create the stencil. Here's the final version. It's all set up as a ready-to-go template, and all you have to do if you wanted to use this template and you wanted to update the information was to go over to the back end, make the updates, and it will show up right here. For instance, I can decide to change the stage for this project, rollout of candidate tracking system, from plan to launch. And all I need to do is to click the data, look for where it is, change it from plan to launch, click enter, and over at the output stage, you would see that it has been updated. Likewise, as you recall, I set up this Gantt chart so that it automatically updates, and I can decide to step into the date and maybe change it to a month earlier, and it updates as well. I even went on ahead to set up this as a hyperlink, and when you click on it, it opens up a new email addressed to that person, Harry K. Well, this fictitious email, and the subject has already been set. I'll just demonstrate quickly before I round up how I did that. So I select the area, I right click, hyperlink, and then the name is Jerome S, so I'm just going to create a fictitious email called Jerome S as 101excelhacks.com and set the subject as about the program status report, and click OK. And if I click it, you will see that it initializes a new email to Jerome S at 101excelhacks.com with the subject line I programmed for it. So I think I got it as close as possible to the original. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Remember to click subscribe if you haven't, and see you on the next video. Bye.